Okay, we still have some more people coming in, so we're just gonna keep letting people in.
Can I be in, Mama?
Say hi to Sophie. Sophie's gonna say hi. Say hi, Sophie. Hi, Shelby. Girls.
Hello.
There is a lot of people.
There is a lot of people, isn't there?
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Why'd you shut the door? Now it's hot.
How many people?
Hello.
It looks like 44.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a lot.
If you've never used Zoom before, there is, if you scroll down to the bottom, there's a video option here. And we're going to keep everybody on mute when we start, but you are able to use your video feed to show us your faces and say hi, use your hand signals. We'll also be able to kind of use this feature later on to see if we can kind of share some pictures and share some different things. All right. And then there's also, if you look at this chat feature, you can click here and you can start entering chat questions in the chat room. And Dustin, and we'll introduce Dustin and Jessica, but we've got people monitoring the chat room. So you can ask questions, you can raise your hands. There's little symbols here. I don't know. Did you ever find it, Randall? The reaction button?
No, I don't think I have the reaction button, but I'll be okay.
There's some people who will be able to have a reaction button with thumbs up and raising your hands. We also have some features where there's little tools where you can actually mark on your screen to follow along, and we can kind of put markers on and try to see if we can make this a little bit more interactive. So we're gonna try to use this as an opportunity to just see how people, hey, I see thumbs up, to see how people can kind of fun. So it's going to be Randall and I kind of bantering back and forth, but we also want your input and your feedback and your questions. So there was a lot of beekeepers who were interested in using Zoom and learning how to better use Zoom too, as kind of an educational tool, as well as a way to kind of connect with their association members. And so we're going to kind of do a few things and hit a few birds with a couple stones or one stone, or we're gonna teach you guys how to use some of these Zoom features, and then we're gonna kind of do different things kind of along the way. Maybe every once in a while show a new feature, like how we can use it out in the field, how we can use it for connected to kind of our the other tools and features of the Zoom conferencing. Before we start, I guess we can introduce ourselves, and before I introduce Randall and myself, I want to introduce our helpers really quick. Jessica Anderson, can you say hi?
Hi. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
You want to say who you are and
Yeah.
what you do?
Yes, I do. I started recently. It's been just about 2 months, and I am the outreach education coordinator for the Bee Lab. And I kind of am taking over a bunch of technician roles right now too, because we are working remotely. So I'm getting on the computer, learning a lot about different outreach projects that we can start doing Zoom. Doing video recording, editing, getting out there with hopefully getting the Girl Scouts. I really enjoy working with children and doing pollinator workshops, hopefully. And so I'm brand new to getting into the Bee Lab, and I absolutely love it. And I've been getting, I got to do my first 2 swarms recently too, out at the yard. So I'm just kind of jack of all trades to say, getting into the Bee Lab. So hopefully I will get to see more of you, and you can, ask questions, and I'll go ahead and answer them too. And we can, and I kind of work underneath Dustin too. Dustin's been helping me out. I'm kind of underneath his wing, so.
Great segue. Dustin, you want to introduce yourself, and then you can share also how you have your awesome background.
I am joined by the lovely floating ghost from Ghostbusters. I'm Judy's apiary manager for the Bee Lab, so I take care of all of the hives for research. I get to help do fun stuff like this, outreach, teach workshops. I'm seeing some familiar names in the chat, so you've been in our workshops, which I'm glad to see everybody. Yeah, I just kind of do a lot of everything, help our researchers out, help Judy out. So we had for those of you who didn't see on our Facebook page, and if you don't like our Facebook page and you're on Facebook, look up UNL Bee Lab. We had 2 6-pound swarms issue in our bee yard this week, and it took 2 deeps to fit them in. It was nuts.
Okay, wait, but before we move on, I want everybody, bring your drinks up. This is going to be a lighthearted chat among us all. So I don't want to get too sciencey. I do want to, share some good knowledge and everything. But I was out there on that second swarm banging metal together and I wanted to see how many other people have heard this before. We heard from an older beekeeper that if you bang metal together during a swarm, it would settle the swarm down. Has anybody else heard this?
Wow.
No, I see some thumbs up and I see some heads going no. I was out there banging metal and I don't know if it worked, but they did land in the orchard tree immediately after. Luke, Luke is here. So Luke,
Hi, Luke.
introduce yourself and then you can share what you saw out there too.
Yeah, my name's Luke Norris. I'm a research technician with the Bee Lab. Really happy to be part of the Bee Lab. I really enjoy working with the bees. That's my favorite thing, but I'm kind of helping just all around wherever help's needed. But yeah, I helped catch the second swarm a couple days ago, but unfortunately went back to the tree. And then so yesterday we recaught the swarm and that went really well. I really enjoy catching swarms too. I think that's a lot of fun.
He's out there searching for ladders for us, so thank you. John says in the chat room that he's heard that banging pots does the trick, but he doesn't remember what for. And the beekeeper that had mentioned the banging of the metal in the pots, they had mentioned pots as well. They said that they thought it simulated thunder, the sound of thunder or loud banging. So I don't know, Randall.
I have never heard of this before. So I guess it's worth a try, right?
I was out there clinging.
Julia, who's here in Iowa, says it's called tanging.
Julia, tell us tell us the story behind tanging. Oh, let me unmute her. There you go.
I don't know if there's anything else to know. It's just called tanging, and there's supposedly they drop wherever they're at when you bang.
They
And that's just,
settle,
I don't
yeah.
know. I've never been able to try it because I never have pots and pans with me when it happens.
I took my metal water bottle and took my hive tool and was banging the bottom of it.
We do have our first question, but do you, Judy and Randall, do you want to introduce yourselves or do we want to get to the questions?
Yeah, let's introduce ourselves. And I'm actually going to share some slides too because I want to bring up Randall's picture. So Randall, go ahead and talk about
me?
Yeah.
All right. Well, if I talk, okay. Oh boy, where did you find?
You didn't see that. Go ahead.
I once Googled myself and saw that. Okay, anyway, my name is Randall Cass. I am the bee extension specialist at Iowa State University. So I do a lot of everything. My position is mostly extension, but I'm also doing a few other things like research, supporting research in different labs here at Iowa State. And I'm starting to roll out a new honey apiary for the university so that we can have ISU honey maybe sometime within the next year. And then teaching an undergraduate bee course here at Iowa State, which they haven't done for several years now. So that's all pretty exciting. But yeah, I'm the go-to bee guy here at Iowa State, and I'm excited to be on here.
Yeah, and Randall's been really helping us with some of the Great Plains Master Beekeeping Certification Program and connecting us with Iowa beekeepers. And we've been connecting with Kansas group too. So there's been a lot of beekeepers within this region that is starting to do a lot more to try to stay connected, because we have a lot of really similar issues and concerns, and there's not a lot of us. And so we're leveraging the expertise we have and try to, you know, expand some of the programming so that more people can get involved and we can kind of share. So you saw that earlier. So my next question is, tell us the story behind this.
The story behind it?
Yeah.
Why
is it on the internet too?
So the picture got uploaded to the internet because I did a really brief intro to beekeeping class for the Small Farms Conference here. It was one of my first, it was right after I started here, so I didn't have too many PowerPoint presentations put together. At the end, they asked me if they could have a copy of it, and I guess they published it online. I included it in the section of the PowerPoint where I talked about, you know, you will get stung.
They can hear me very quietly.
And that, I think,
Can you turn
was
your
my,
camera around so I can see your screen?
that was my first sting. Are people able to see this?
Guy, he's talking.
Oh, yeah.
There's a thing up there. My picture does not show.
Okay.
So that was my first sting when I moved to Iowa. I got it right in the neck. It was I hadn't been stung in over a year at that point. So I itched my eye, and the swell moved to my eye. But it makes for a great photo to remind people that, you know, there's no such thing as stingless beekeeping. I mean, at least not in North America.
Right, and I know this is our first time doing happy hour, and I knew that there was going to be a lot of people who are new to beekeeping and kind of some of our newer beekeepers that are, you know, have taken our courses. So I also wanted to share some of this, you know, stings do happen, and it does, you know, suck. It doesn't feel good to get stung. It hurts and you swell. This is me. Let's see if I can change the photo. So I am Judy Smart. I run the UNLV lab, if you guys don't know who I am. So I started beekeeping in 2007, and I started at Washington State University with Steve Shepard, and I've never been stung before, been stung by wasps, didn't really know how to respond. This sting happened in the middle of a swarm demonstration.
So you got stung in front of people and you swelled up in front of people?
Well, and the worst part was, I'm a graduate student. I work for Steve Shepard. He put the graduate students and his technicians on this horse and pony show. So we hit up the Washington State conference and the Oregon State conference. And then we went to California for the beekeeper conference down there. And then we were working with Sue Kobe. So we went there to go do the insemination course. So luckily, Sue's swarm demonstration happened at the end of the insemination workshop because my eyes swelled up for 3 days straight. But we went and toured a queen rearing. So we went to the Wootons to look at their operation, and I could barely see anything. I showed up with this big old.
No, this was my sting was maybe the second week on the job, and everyone freaked out. They were like, "We thought you'd done this before. Are you not a professional? Why?" I was like, "No, it's just this thing. It happened."
Yep, and Steve's technician, she was a very direct person. And she was mad at me the whole ride back because her co-pilot no longer could drive or navigate. And I just was kind of this useless grad student in the truck, all doped up on Benadryl, can't see a map, can't read maps, can't drive, completely useless. She's so mad at me.
Oh, that's miserable.
It was a really fun experience, though, as a grad student. I gotta say, we went through a lot. But it's happens, things do happen. So, I mean, I know that it's really uncomfortable, and if I got stung in the face, I probably wouldn't swell that bad anymore. But this was definitely the first face sting, and it was in a swarm demo. And I was always told that you don't get stung in a swarm demo. But I have black hair. And I think, you know, bees really do not like black fuzzy creatures. Yeah.
We have a question in the chat. How do you catch a swarm?
Well, there's a lot of different things that you can do. I mean, there are people who use these swarm traps. There's different baits that you can use, you know, like oils, lemongrass oil, for example. Oftentimes, when we're looking for swarms or when we come across a swarm, if it's reachable, you know, if it's on a tree or a branch, you can clip that branch and put the whole thing in the box and have them settle. The idea of the swarm is you got to wait till that colony settles somewhere on a branch, and then you got to be able to find that queen, not find her, but at least transport the queen into the box that you want to move them in, and the rest of the bees will kind of parade in there. I don't recommend, you know, breaking into walls and extracting swarms there. And there are ways to extract feral colonies where you can cut out combs and do cutouts, but that's a lot more complicated, and I definitely don't recommend new beekeepers doing it. What do you think, Randall?
Yeah, so tree branch, of course, is the easiest. I think we've all experienced. They used to make me, I don't know, Luke, if this is what you did, but I would just stand under the tree with, you know, like the hive body, and someone would just kind of shake it, and they would all just kind of rain bees down on me, and we'd hope we got the queen.
That's
That
what we did. Luke did that. He cut the branch and I stood underneath and we just shook it a few times and then we put it right down in there.
Yeah. Well, I just got an email yesterday from a park ranger at one of the state parks here in Iowa. They have, their state park is right adjacent to a golf course, and they have an old tree that's been hollowed out and there's bees in there. And they want to remove the tree because it has an overhang and it's causing problems, but it's full of bees and they weren't quite sure what to do. And one thing that I suggested that I've never done myself is a trap out where you put, you basically make a mesh cone. Have you done this before, Judy? Because I haven't. You can make a mesh cone and you cover that over the hive entrance with the mesh cone, and the bees are able to leave the hive, but they're not able to get back in. And you can place, then you strategically place a hive body with some comb and some nurse bees and some brood right next door. And so when the bees return, eventually over the course of a few weeks, the bees will move into the new hive. I don't know if anyone has experience with that, but that's one way slowly over time, especially when they're in a place that you couldn't, like for example, inside your house and you don't want to take the wall apart, or if they're inside like a brick wall. That's one method I've seen used.
That's cool. Yeah, I
Are you
haven't had
asking
very
if
many
people have,
experiences
I've done
with
that.
traps.
This is Mark Welsh.
Hi, Mark.
Hi, I have done that. The one very important thing when you do a trap out on a tree is to make sure there's no other exits besides the one that you put the screen over. I did this on an old maple tree that should have been cut down, but the owner did not want to do that because of the expense, but she wanted the bees out. Well, so I put a cone over with a pretty good size, probably 2 foot by 2 foot square on the tree over the hole, because there was a big hole and big cone coming out, hive right next to it, 12 feet up in the air, and came back a few days later. Well, the bees were coming in and out of a crack right below where I had the screen. So I put a screen over that, came back, well, they were going in a crack below that. When I was done, I had 12 feet of screen up and down, 4 or 5 feet wide. Below that and above it, it took a long time to finally get them to not be able to return to that tree. So the first thing I watch some YouTube videos, and they suggest putting smoke into the hole and then looking for where and lots of smoke to see if they are coming out, if the smoke is coming out anywhere else. So that's my plan in the future.
Yeah, we've had some really great comments in the chat group too, and some great resource suggestions too. So don't forget to follow along on the chat too during our discussion. So there's been suggestions on some reading materials and some other resources on swarming. And then, of course, Dustin just showed the swarm that we collected, or they collected last week or this week. And then there were some questions about feeding. I think I was looking into that. So right now, most of you have probably just recently installed your bees, right? And we've had a lot of questions on how to install your bees. And at the Bee Lab, we've been doing a lot of stuff trying to encourage people to draw new comb and draw out wax when they're installing their bees, because it's a great time. Your bees are in this package. When you're in the package, they're in swarming mode, and so they're kind of behaviorally ready to build wax and to produce a new nest. And so when you hive them into your boxes, that's a great time to kind of draw out comb and continually incorporate new comb production into your operation every year. So even though you've got new drawn comb, continually feed in new foundation every year, you'll be able to have reserves where you're more comfortable tossing out old or questionable combs, or combs that have possible diseases or other issues. So we didn't know how this session was going to be, so I did prepare some pictures of something that we've been trying to work on at the Bee Lab, and this is unfunded, so this is just preliminary data. We wanted to just basically answer the question, well, how do you best get bees to draw out comb? How do I arrange my frames? What frames do I use? Do I use foundation? Do I use drawn comb? Do I wax my combs? Do I not wax my foundation? So, I mean, how many people have questions related to, okay, I'm okay with getting my bees to draw out comb, but how do I do that? Yeah, we get that a lot. Randall's like, yeah, me too.
I just want to hear about your experiment with it.
You guys want to see it?
Yeah.
Okay, this is where it's going to get a little interactive too. So let's go back to that stinging face picture. All right. This is just kind of a reminder. I should probably started with that one, but well, since everybody has had an opportunity to sign on, if you aren't familiar with stuff, up here, there are these, the ability to change your speaker view. So you can change how you see the presenter screen and how you see everybody else on the Zoom area. And then here is where I said you can unmute yourself, and then this is your video feed. These options here is where you're going to find your participant list, or who's joining us on this Zoom session, the chat box feature. Eventually, later on, when we get more sophisticated with Zoom, we might be sharing screens with one another. So there's that ability. Currently, only the host has that ability right now. And then, of course, your chat's going to come up kind of in this view here. So we're gonna have the ability to kind of all join in. And the reason why I'm kind of showing you this is there's also, this is what I was showing Randall, is this, you scroll, I think sometimes you have to scroll your mouse down to the bottom of the screen, but there'll be an annotation, or up. This annotation toolbar is up. If you scroll up, there's an annotation tool, which is how I was able to kind of make these drawings here. I can change my color. I can also add my arrow. So this is me responding. I think it's this one. I can use this to spotlight something. So I was going to suggest that this is the setup of the treatment. We had 10 colonies that were coming in for packages, and these packages were just coming in for teaching purposes. But we decided if we're getting packages anyways, we're going to set them up in a way where we can kind of generate data. So every year we're going to set up these packages in the same way, and we're going to start collecting data on them. So the first two are all foundation. They're all put in there unwaxed. The second two are all pre-waxed, meaning we rolled some wax over it, and I'll show you a picture of that. The third treatment was checkered, unwaxed, and pre-waxed, kind of, you know, alternating one and the other. The fourth treatment was using 5 drawn combs in the center, and then the 5 additional foundation frames on the outside, and I'll show pictures of that too. But at UNL, what we normally do to install our hives is to add 2 food frames, 3 empty combs, install our package on those drawn combs, and then have those foundation frames on the outside and start checkerboarding them inward. So the last 2 treatments we had was using those 5 drawn combs, but either having unwaxed foundation on the outside or pre-waxed foundation on the outside. So using your arrow, if you can find your toolbar, put your arrow down where you think which treatment probably did the best in terms of wax building production, like wax production and brew production. Honestly, I'm gonna put mine down too. I think it was gonna be this. I'm gonna see how many people can try it. Can you guys try it?
What are we supposed to do?
Try to put your arrow down or make a mark on which treatment you think is going to be, Randall thinks it's this one too, you think is going to be the most productive in terms of wax production and brew production out of the 5 treatments. We got some arrows there. Oh, we got some here. There's some here. There's some there. And if you can't figure out the toolbox, you can also enter it in the chat box too.
You type it in chat. What's everybody think? 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5?
Yeah. I'm gonna figure out how to make this so that we can kind of like incorporate some sort of interactive, how do you do those, you know, they do those analytical surveys.
I've got a polling option at the bottom of my screen.
Oh, do you know how to use that feature?
I don't. Let's see.
Next time we're gonna know how to use that. That would be perfect.
Let me play with
That's
it.
kind of what we need, huh? The polling option. I am seeing a lot of 5s and 3s. That is a lot of, is that kind of what you guys are seeing? A lot of 5s and 3s. Some for the 2s, some for the 4s. This is fun. Now before, I'm gonna clear all the drawings, but before we start talking about what we've seen, and this is 10 days after an installation, I am just gonna premise this by saying this is like not scientific. This is very preliminary. So 2 colonies does not say anything about anything, but it is fun to talk about. and we can continue to bring this up each year too. Okay, so I'm gonna clear the drawings and keep going. All drawings.
Judy, do you use only waxed foundation? Or do you use?
Yeah, so I'm going to show
or
you what this
plastic?
waxed and pre-waxed look like. So
I mean, plastic or wax?
yes,
Okay.
they were all plastic. Yep.
I know
So
a lot of beekeepers don't like plastic at all.
yeah, I know. And some beekeepers don't use that plastic, so it probably, I mean, if you're using the wax foundation, this isn't going to matter to you. But if you're using the plastic, which a lot of people do, this is going to be kind of more, you know, relevant. This is what that unwaxed looks like. It's just unwaxed foundation. And basically, when I went out there, I just kind of sectioned the frame into 8s and then looked to see on each side how many of those sections were drawn, or quarter sections, I guess, here. So those 2 are unwaxed. And then these are pre-wax. And by pre-wax, we basically just mean that we ran, we take a bucket out, and when we have field wax, when we have burr comb, when we've got extra junk, instead of throwing it in the yard, which attracts, you know, animals and critters, we throw it in a bucket, and then Dustin and the crew melts it down and cleans that wax up, and then we use it to wax the frames. And so you can see this really kind of nice thin layer of waxing. Luke, you did this. You want to talk about anything?
Yeah, I guess when I was applying the wax, you can see on the top picture where you have just enough to where it kind of coats the little, I guess they're not quite circles. They'd be pentagons.
Hexagon.
Hexagons, yeah.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, you try not to add too much to where it'll kind of glop in to where it fills the hexagons, but enough to kind of give it a nice coating. Yeah, I noticed like it would, like if I took my fingernail and kind of pressed it, I could tell that there was some wax there, yeah, just kind of a, I guess, consistent coating on all of it. But yeah, when we checked on the hives, it seemed like they really did enjoy having that, be able to just, they took to it right away. And so I really do see the benefit in doing that. And I ended up doing that at home just because in the past I've had it where the bees are kind of reluctant to draw the wax on the foundation that we hadn't waxed yet. And so yeah, I think it's a great benefit.
Yeah, so this is the one that was treatment 3, where we just basically alternated between waxed and pre-waxed. And so if you're following along, I'm adding the data on what we collected for those colonies. So basically the ones that are bolded are the data for that treatment. And basically there was, you know, for colony 520, and you'll see our colony numbers are numbered in a way where we have a colony number and then a year indicator. So 1-20 is the first new colony of year 2020. Year 1-220 is our second package of year 2020. So our previous colonies are labeled 1-19, 2-19, and then the year before that is whatever colony number in the year 18. And so there's a way for us to kind of keep kind of a chronological order or kind of mapping of these colonies and their health, but also be able to kind of track the new colonies coming in. So that's just how we ordered our colonies. I don't know, Randall, do you have a special way of ordering your colonies?
I can't even see my own post.
Sorry, I was muted.
That's weird.
Most of our colonies have been research hives, so we have been tracking their health year to year to year. We kind of been starting. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, are you roboting or am I roboting?
I think
So even if
someone's roboting.
yeah,
If you could,
push on it,
I think
does
maybe
it
not
eventually
everybody
load?
muted.
Oh, okay. Well, Dustin and Jessica and Luke will search out and mute. There's feedback from somewhere.
I'm on down.
I guess what I'm saying is I think that's a great way. When you're starting with a new package and a new queen, it's a good way to keep track of how old that queen is and how many years you've had that hive. Is that your main goal? Is, you know, being like, oh, okay, this is a second year queen. Oh, this is a third year queen. Do you mark your queens with the year colors as well?
Yep, we do. And then that helps us when we're out there, when we see the queen, we can easily look at the colony and be, oh yeah, that's the right queen, or no, this has been replaced, or, you know, so we have an ability to kind of look at, oh yeah, it was replaced, but it makes sense because this colony had a 2-year-old queen.
So when you re-queen a hive, then that changes the colony's number. It would then become, it would then get a 20 after whatever number it was.
Yes, yeah. Yeah.
When we split
and then
a
if
colony,
we split a hive, we have 5, let's say 119 and 119S. And that becomes a split until the new queen comes, and then that 119S then becomes whatever number 20. That way we can continually track them, whether we use them for research or whether we use them for just management purposes. Yeah. It is interesting though, because come in the springtime, when we look at those colonies, some of the ones that are from 2018 have pretty low brood and population counts, but the ones from 2019 tend to do a little bit better. And so we're just keeping like long-term track of these kinds of trends on how well 2-year-old colonies do, 1-year-old colonies, because I don't really tend to buy replacing a queen every year. I follow the idea of replacing the queens when it needs to be replaced, but you also have to do a better job tracking when they need to be replaced.
Right.
Do so.
we've got a couple questions, and this is going to need the people's who are doctors. So how much pollen can a bee carry?
A lot.
And I know for us, Chrissy Land asked a question, and we use a lot of plastic foundation, so I don't know how to answer this. So it's for you and anybody in the chat too. Do you see the bees avoiding building wax over the wires that hold the plastic foundation in the frame? So they've got some wired frames that have foundation in there.
I mean, the foundation itself is wax though, right? So
well, so we have the black plastic foundation that came pre-waxed from, I believe, Man Lake. And some of our foundation, some of our frames had wire already in them. Instead of taking the wire out, when we popped the plastic foundation in, my grandfather had just left the wires there, and they avoid throwing the wax over that. Is there, I mean, some of the frames are loose enough that even without the wires, like the foundation would just fall out of them because they're just a little bit stretched. They're recent
frames.
Yeah, that might be our answer.
yeah, and you know, just if you're trying to get the wires out, you can clip the wires and heat them up and pull them out, because that heating them up will soften up the wax, and you can kind of move the wires that way. But that still doesn't kind of, you know, you still have wonky frames here and there. So
How much pollen can a bee carry?
oh, I don't know. What's an average pollen grain size? A couple milligrams. I mean, well, let's back up. It depends on the bee. Your bumblebees are going to carry a lot more pollen, and some of your solitary and smaller bees are going to carry a lot less. And then it depends on where you're carrying that pollen, because you've got leafcutter bees that carry their pollen on the hairs on their abdomen. Yeah, so Randall's showing.
I'm just nodding. Yeah. Yes.
They'll pack that pollen right on there, and so they can get quite a lot. I don't know what the average honeybee pollen load is, the weight of it. I bet Matthew would know. We've had our undergrads sorting pollen grains. We could ask them if they weighed them. I'll look that up and get back to you. I know we collect pollen grains all the time. We probably have that somewhere. Okay, so
Did you
here,
finish the results of your, okay.
yeah, so sorry, I got sidetracked. So here's the 5 drawn and 5 unwaxed. And what I was just showing here was, here's the top 2 frames. The pictures up here are pictures of the 2 frames that are on the very outside of those drawn frames. And so you can see absolutely very little was being produced in terms of wax. In 720 and 820, there was no new comb drawn in 720, and then there was about 3/4 of one side drawn, and I think that's over here, of that colony drawn. And it had surprisingly less brood. And so when I saw this, I was looking at it and was thinking, wow, this is kind of odd. I was hoping that this one would do better. But it did very similar. It had very little wax drawn and very little brood. And what I think was happening is that when we take our 5 frames of drawn comb in Nebraska, the weather is so unpredictable. You never know if it's going to drop down and freeze, and that's the same for Iowa too. We usually give them 2 food frames and then 3 empty combs, and then we install the package on there. Randall, how do you install your packages?
Yeah, we do a couple of food frames. We also do a brood frame, if we can get that. So a couple of brood frames, a couple of food frames, and then, yeah, basically empty comb on the edge. Yeah.
On the edge, right? Yeah. So this is 10 days into it. And what I think was happening was that it got cold, and it was up and down, cold and warm. But those 2 food frames with the honey in the middle, right? And I'm talking about, let's see if I can, oops, get my toolbar. I'm talking about this frame and this frame, our food frames. They were essentially, I think, acting as kind of a wall, preventing the bees from exploring the outside because they were all just clustered in and tight and cozy. And then you feed the colony syrup, and they're starting to deposit the syrup into your 3 empty combs that you put right in the center. And so now those frames have food on the top, and she's got a smaller brood area.
With the warm temps this week, Judy, they started to build out past the food wall.
Mm-hmm.
So we needed these constant 70-degree temps, but they have ventured past that food wall and they started to build comb.
Right, now that it's kind of warmed up. But what really surprised me was this right here, that these, the brood count here was much lower than I thought it would be for drawn comb. Just, this, of course, this is just the first 10 days of, after installing a package, and it's only 2 colonies or 10 colonies total. So we can't say much about it, but I did want to point out that when I looked at it initially, all 10 of these hives look very similar, like, in terms of adult population, which makes sense. They've been hived with packages, the same adult population. Oh, and then my girls were out there helping me. These are my 6-year-old and my 3-year-old, and I wanted to see how other people felt about young kids, because she just wanted to climb right into the hive. No fear whatsoever. But I thought that this is kind of the summary with the treatments in there. And of course, again, this is preliminary. We're going to repeat this over and over and over again every year. But what I thought was interesting is if you look at the yellow one, where you had pre-waxed foundation and no drawn foundation, you had the most fully drawn new comb, followed by the checkered, unwaxed, and pre-waxed. It's really weird. Dustin went out there and moved the outer foundation frames and checkered them inward so that the food frame was moved out. So now it's warmed up. We checkered boarded those outer frames back in. So I think you did that on, what was it, Thursday or Friday? I'm sorry, Tuesday or Wednesday?
Let's see. Wednesday or Thursday?
Oh, that's when, yeah, it was
Wednesday.
Wednesday. We made the queen bank on Tuesday.
Wednesday, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We got some more questions pouring in, guys.
Cool, yay.
How much brood on a frame, or how many frames of brood justifies counting the frame for a split? So I think Eric is asking, like, how many frames of brood do you start seeing before you start considering splitting at this time of year?
Oh, well, some of our colonies were huge, like they're 20 frames of bees, and we usually are able to split, or if there's at least, what, 8 to 10 frames of brood, and depends on the temperature too. And how strong the adult population is.
How long should we be feeding a new colony sugar syrup?
Well, if you start them on foundation, you'll have to feed them a little bit more to encourage them to do the wax building, because they require that sugar syrup to convert or stimulate their wax glands to produce the wax. It's kind of a hard thing because sometimes they take it down and then they shove it back into the cells. And so we usually say you feed them until they stop taking it, but some bees will continue to take it and just start plugging their cells with it. So I don't know, it's a fine line. Dustin, we stop feeding when we start seeing a lot of forage out, whether they needed, whether they still take it or not.
Once, I don't say we haven't shut off feeding yet and the dandelions are out, but definitely when we start seeing at least one wave of dandelions through, and then a lot of the different fruit trees and the plum thickets start blooming, and we kind of start to taper it down. It's just like every year it's another odd year for us, and I don't know if this is true for any of the Kansas folks or Iowa, or if we have anybody from Missouri in here, but any colonies that seem to have survived winter this year, they're huge. Like they look almost like June colonies should look. It's crazy. So, and a lot of them still had a lot of honey, like almost a full deep of honey in some of these colonies. And, we're not necessarily feeding them because we want them to use that honey for brood production and kind of chew themselves open again so the queen can lay more. But like Judy said, if you've got a new package and you're on foundation, you're gonna have to feed your 1-to-1 sugar syrup some more, because your goal is getting 20 frames of comb built out. So based on what we've showed you guys, if we have any new beekeepers in the chat here, if you've got that second box, maybe you can get your hands on some beeswax and paint your other 10 frames with some wax to help them build it out quicker.
Randall, how are the bees out there in Iowa?
Oh, he's on mute.
You're muted.
I'm trying to juggle answering messages right now. I just sent a private message to the wrong person. Our bees they are bustling. They're pretty strong. They're stronger than they were last spring. Is that what I was only half listening. Is it the same case in Nebraska? Yeah, so our hives are pretty strong. Like I mentioned, I am putting together a new honey producing apiary using the bees from our research hives. And so I will be shaking bees and maybe combining some smaller ones. But for the most part, they've got a lot of brood production, several frames of brood in a lot of the hives. So it seems pretty early, right? Is this early for you guys?
I mean, it is early, but you know, I'm starting to see this interesting trend, right? Last winter we had some pretty high losses for the majority of the state. We didn't, but a lot of Nebraskans had a lot of high losses in the winter, and they got a lot of new bees in, and they did really well. And now we've got a good overwintering success rate. We're going to see a lot of mites this summer, which means we might anticipate higher losses this next coming, winter. But definitely, because it's a good problem to have, we have to really start focusing on swarm management and varroa control. But I mean, it's a good spring.
Judy, there's a question from Travis here. I'm not sure if we answered it yet. It says, new beekeeper here installed 2 packages on 4 or 5. One hive has 5 to 6 frames drawn. There's 1 frame of capped brood, and the rest they are filling with sugar syrup. On the frames with the syrup, they keep trying to build queen cells. I've already removed 2 capped queen cells. Should I stop feeding syrup, keep removing the queen cells, or just let them be?
It sounds like either you're queenless or you're honeybound. Meaning that your queen has nowhere to lay because they're putting so much sugar syrup into the cells or honey into the cells, and there's not enough cells available for brood laying, which is kind of happens when you don't see continual egg laying, that the larvae you do have start to age. And then I would look to see if there's evidence of a queen. The queen cells tell me that there isn't. So I would let them keep those queen cells and rear a new queen, because it sounds like that colony is starting to have some issues. Unless you're talking about swarm, but I would have a hard time believing you just hide that package. So, Randall?
I agree. I think that was good advice.
And then there's another question here. I'm not sure if we answered yet, but it says, it's from Mark Welsh. It says, we have 2 hives in our backyard in the middle of Omaha. The strong hive has 2 superseder queen cells and 3 swarm queen cells. They are all open, not closed yet. It also has 6 frames of very solid sealed brood. 5 frames are only foundation. They're asking, should they split the hive into 3 hives to try to stop them from swarming? Let's see, and then it says,
it's a super strong hive, but they're not. Are they sure it's a supersedure cell and not swarm cells?
It doesn't say, but they're wondering if they should try to stop them from swarming or let them grow their own queens.
This is Mark, and the swarm cells are at the bottom of each frame, and the supersedure cells are in the middle of the frames. Different frames, though.
Yeah, it sounds like your colony is just so ready to bust and swarm that they're just making queen cells everywhere.
Well, there's lots of room, except for they've got 5 frames of just wax foundation that they could be drawing out on.
Is that wax foundation? Where is that wax foundation?
It's on the west side. So I guess I could checkerboard it in. Would that help?
So what? I'm sorry. You have them in 2 colonies.
Yes. So the foundation is on the top box, the top deep, and all on one side.
I see. Okay. So what you're saying is you have two deeps, your colony is in the bottom deep and the top box has all foundation, correct?
No, the top box has half foundation, and there's
Where's the
brood
foundation, in the center or on the outside?
on the outside, on just on one side, and there's brood in both the bottom and the top super.
And they're not drawing out wax?
Well, they are. It's they're doing a great job of that. It's just that there was a lot of just foundation in this when we started.
And so do you see a lot of eggs at all?
I see some very young larvae. It was getting on towards dusk, so it wasn't easy to see the tiniest of eggs in there. Next time it gets warm enough, I'll go out there, but there were half a dozen real solid frames of sealed brood, and around some of that sealed brood was larva, and on at least one other frame, it was had a fair amount of very young larvae. So although I didn't see the queen, I'm pretty sure she's still there.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, if sometimes if you've got a deep of a box and a colony in a deep, and the second box is added and it's all foundation, sometimes that still makes the colony feel congested because there's nowhere to expand the nest because they haven't drawn out that comb yet. It would be the same if there was a deep of honey on top of that deep. There would be congestion because there's nowhere for the queen to go and expand her brood area. So it sounds like you've got a lot of bees going and working. I hesitate to suggest that you can certainly split it. I think what you can do is split that colony because you're uncertain where the queen is. Is it large enough to split?
Yes, it's there's 15 frames of pretty solid bees on there. The only place there are no bees is on the 5 frames of foundation. This is overwintered swarm that I got from last year.
Yeah, I'd split.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then definitely, yeah. You split it, but the question is where the queen is. You don't want to put queen cells in both of the colonies in in both splits, because if you got queen cells in both splits, there's a chance that there can still be a swarm occurring. You could put a queen excluder in between the colonies and try to come back and see where the eggs are, but you're also risking the chance that they're going to swarm because they're really close. So I would go back and carefully try to see where the eggs are. Are they in the top box or are they in the bottom box? And split it so you can try to at least get your queen cells in your split and your mother colony with the queen and the eggs in the other one.
Okay.
Either way, make sure you have eggs in both boxes.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
Randall?
I was only half listening. I was trying to keep track of a message. So I don't feel like I have the full information to give my opinion. But yeah, if you're what I caught there at the end is if you're splitting a hive, you definitely want brood and eggs in the split. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's a challenge because when you've got queen cells everywhere, if you split a hive and you've got queen cells in both of your hives, the likelihood of whichever hive has the queen is still going to end up swarming on you. So what you want to try to do when you split is make sure one split has your mother and some eggs, and the other split has all the queen cells and some eggs. In case something goes wrong, they can rear another queen.
Because they're making swarm cells, would the queen might be slimming herself down, getting ready to fly, so maybe she has stopped laying eggs at this point.
Yep, that's possible.
It's going to make it a little harder to find her.
Right.
So,
but since your queen cells aren't capped yet, you still might have a little time. So get out there and start looking.
Okay.
We have another question for the experts. What happens if my hive gets big enough to split, but I don't want to keep them, or I don't want more than 2 hives. They have 2 hives. They're worried about them getting too large and they don't want to split and then have 4 or 6. What do you guys suggest? This is from Amber.
Oh, Amber, where are you? Are you close to other beekeepers? Because I think other beekeepers would be happy to, take a split off of your hands.
If it's the Amber, I think it is. It's my midwife, my wife's midwife, and she's an eagle.
Give it to Dustin then, he'll take it.
I know, right? Yeah, so I'm an eagle. I think there's another beekeeper that's by me, but I don't know if they still are beekeeping, but I see the hives when I go by their place and they're listed on that site. I've been meaning to talk to them too.
I'm close.
I
live just north of Waverly.
Oh yeah. I just don't. I don't know. I don't know if I can keep 2 hives, and we don't really have any rules and regulations about hives in our area, so I'm trying to not make anybody in my neighborhood angry either.
Understandable.
Yeah, which I don't think they will be, because they're pretty, so far most of my neighbors that have seen our hives this year have been really excited that I have them, which has kind of surprised me. But so yeah, so I just am concerned if they get too big and they look like they're gonna swarm. I don't know where to put them or how to put them.
Amber, I think with you just installing your packages, they won't get that big this year. But if you do produce any honey this year, maybe you should consider taking a portion of that and sweetening up your neighbors with some free honey.
That is exactly my plan.
Good job. Yes.
We call that karma honey.
Yes.
Yep. That is exactly my plan if that even happens this year. I'm pretty sure I killed them all. I don't know. I was really confident about shaking them in, so I did that. We felt really good about that. Then on my second day, I had, I released the queen, and that went miserably, I'm pretty sure, because I think I threw something at one point because I thought I was going to get stung. And then, so I don't know if they're in there. They might be, or they flew away. And then the third day, I realized I put all my empty frames in the middle instead on the outside. So all my frames are on the outside currently, and my empties are in the middle. So they're going to be all jacked up when I look at them the next time, I'm sure.
When you look at them the next time, Amber, put your combs in the center, and if the queen has gone to one side or the other,
okay,
and started to lay, move them to the center,
yeah,
and keep all the brood together, and put your empties on the outside, just for now.
Yeah.
You always want your brood nest in the center of the colony.
Once I thought about it, I knew exactly that is what should have happened. But this was why I posted what I posted on the bee site was, if you felt like you've ever studied for the test and you totally know you're going to pass it until you get to the test and you bomb it miserably, that was my bombing it miserably.
That's great.
It's okay. We all make these mistakes.
Yes,
you saw
we do.
Randall and Judy have gotten the crap stung out of them and their faces swelled shut. Like, we all have been there.
Yes.
We've all done weird stuff. It's okay.
That's how we learn. That's how we're learning.
Well,
Exactly.
if any of you have kids and ever watch Meet the Robinsons and you learn by your failures, not from your successes, I should be an expert after this, because I felt like I failed every day of this week except for installation. I felt real good about that. So, or shaking my bees, I should say, shaking my bees. Oh, and my 9-year-old, which talking about kids and helping. So my 9-year-old shook her hive. So
awesome.
She put all of her bees in her hive.
Good for her. Yay.
Cool. Okay, so we're gonna wrap up here soon. Thank you, Amber. And there's a lot of people who said that they'd be willing to take your bees off your hands. So go ahead and contact us if you need to reach out, or just like ask on our website, on our Facebook site. And then Mark made a good point to remind people who are starting that if you are starting, it is best to have at least 2 colonies, because sometimes your packages are going to have differences in their ability and skills and personality and traits. So just to draw the luck, sometimes you get a package full of old bees and they don't do well with wax production. They don't do well with brood production, or they're slow at laying, or something's wrong with the queen. You have another colony to boost that hive up and pull out frames of brood and kind of get it going and help that out. So there's utility there in having those two colonies there for you when you start. And then the Tiptons, hi Becky, she asked why there's issues with queens that seem to be accepted. They start laying and then they seem to supersede. And there's no good evidence as why that queen isn't great. It just happens. I don't actually know. I know that this does happen. There are issues. This is what kind of spawned a lot of the research on transportation stress and what happens when you ship bees and what temperature it needs to go in. And so there's a lot of these little factors and variables that we still haven't teased out. I don't have a good answer. What about you, Randall?
Hives have personalities, right? I mean, there's so many different traits that different hives have. And yeah, sometimes at least in our research, we've had hives that we keep on trying to requeen and keep trying to requeen, and it just doesn't take. So I hate that I don't really have much of an answer, except that, yeah, it's tough. I don't know. No, my mind's drawing a blank.
This is one of the things I most enjoy about.
Oh, Judy, you turned into a robot.
Oh man.
You're a robot.
You'll have to log out and rejoin. I think for you new beekeepers, there's all kinds of weird stuff that happen with packages. I think it was on the Nebraska Beekeeping Facebook page that somebody had 3 packages that they installed, and it's like one of them completely left the colony and went over to another one and just bolstered it. Like, I've had that happen in my personal yards. Like, no idea why. They just, all the bees left except for like 200 bees and the queen in the other colony. Like, weird things happen in the yard and it's not you. Like, it's just, bees do bee things. Like, it's just odd. I don't know how to explain it. If I don't know if Randall has any thoughts or what, but
yeah, I've never experienced that. But you're right, bees do bee things. They're only maybe we can say they're semi-domesticated. They're certainly not domesticated animals. They don't need us. So it's always a learning experience. And I think that's what drew me to beekeeping in the first place, is that you never stop learning. There's always something new and weird that can happen. And it's something that's inherently experimental. So you kind of learn by failing, right? It's just scientific. You try one thing and then that doesn't work, so you try another. But yeah, sometimes you get a weird package, like Dustin was saying, and weird stuff happens.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, is that better? Is my feed better now?
Yes, no longer a robot.
Awesome. That happens to my computer for some reason. I don't know why. I was just gonna say that this is one of the really bright spots of my job or my position is engaging with the beekeepers. And when you notice things like this that are odd, and when you notice these weird trends, what helps us as researchers is when you make those observations and then jot those observations down. So we have a better grasp at how to ask the right questions. Once we ask the right questions, then we can kind of design these experiments to really follow up and say, okay, how do we figure out what is really causing this problem? Or how do we figure out how to resolve this issue or mitigate that problem? So this is one of the things that we love, about our jobs, is engaging with you guys. So thank you. Randall and I will kind of chat in the background to figure out what we're going to talk about next week, but we do hope to see you next week. And I don't know, I think we're going to start signing off and saying thank you.
thank you everybody for coming. This was the first one that we did. This was a lot of fun. I don't know about anybody else, but this was fun.
This was lots of fun. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you for coming. Yeah.
Yes.
We'll see you next week.
And seriously, yeah, if you guys have any questions with your hives, if you guys see anything funky this week,
Take photos.
take photos, bring those questions next Friday. We're doing this every Friday, 5 to 6. Every Friday, 5 to 6 is happy hour.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Super
And then-
informative. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming in.
Okay, I'll say bye. Bye, everybody.
Oh, okay.
Bye.
So Judy, I'll talk to you. Or maybe we can have a check-in and a recap and plans for next week at some point.
Yeah, let's do that.
And pick some
All right.
topics or something to make conversation about.
Absolutely.
Bye,
Yeah.
Randall. Bye,
yeah,
everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks
Thanks.
for creating, Dustin.
Thanks,
Bye.
Dustin.